Good morning, and welcome to the official press conference for Till, which will have its world premiere tonight at the 60th New York Film Festival. I'm Joe Newmeyer, film critic for New York's WOR Radio, and it's my honor to moderate and to welcome writer-director Chinonye Chukwu, Jalyn Hall, who plays Emmett Till, Sean Patrick Thomas, who plays Gene Mobley, John Douglas Thompson, who plays Moses Wright, Tosin Cole, who plays Medgar Evers, Jayme Lawson, who plays Myrlie Evers, and writer-producer Keith Beauchamp. To our assembled press, please submit questions using the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen, and we'll get to all of your questions as time allows. Congratulations, all of you, on such an important, extraordinary, and fantastic film. Such an honor to be sitting here with you today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Unfortunately, Danielle Deadweiler had some travel trouble this morning, getting in from Atlanta, and can't be with us, but she will make it in time for tonight's world premiere at the New York Film Festival. Chinonye, to start off, there's so much to talk about with this amazing film. Your vision for this film encompasses so much. It's intimate, but it's also epic. It's about the love between a mother and son, and also how tragedy inspires Emmett Till's mother, Mamie, to turn her incredible loss and pain into a catalyst for the civil rights movement. Talk to us about what your goals were going into the film, what your visions were for it.
Well, the very first kind of non-negotiable goal that I had when the producers first approached me 3 years ago was that the story needed to be told through Mamie's point of view, that she was going to be centered as the protagonist, and we were going to really follow closely her emotional journey. And because without Mamie Till, the world wouldn't know who Emmett Till was. And so it was, and that was such a unique way to enter this kind of story as a kind of a character study. And so that was the first thing. And I knew that by doing that, it took away any a need to show the physical violence inflicted on Black bodies, because that wasn't a part of the story that I wanted to tell. And the other thing is I really wanted to show and communicate as much joy and community and love and hope and possibility alongside the inherent pain and sadness of the story as well, and wanted to do that through all the elements of cinema and cinematic language, from the extraordinary work of our costume designer Marcy Rogers to the production design by Kurt Beach, and of course the cinematography Bobby Bukowski, and the music by Abel Korzeniowski.
Yeah. Now, early on, it is important to see that love between Mamie, obviously, and Emmett, and how that dynamic works, and how important that love was to them, and how vibrant of a young man Emmett was.
Exactly. I mean, and that's why I made sure that we spent a significant amount of time with Emmett as a human being, and really seeing and feeling his humanity and his personality and his innocence. And because at the core of this as well, at the core of this film as well, it's a love story. And we get to really see, feel, experience the love and humanity that existed between Mamie and Emmett.
Yeah. Keith, you made a documentary in 2005. You knew Mamie Till. Mobley, can you tell us about her and what devoting your life to this story has meant to you?
Wow, that's a good question. The late Mrs. Mamie Till Mobley, Mother Mobley, I would call her, was probably one of the most prolific people I will ever meet in my lifetime. When she spoke, her words moved your soul, and I have never had that experience before from anyone. But she was a beautiful mother who was dedicated to fighting for justice for her son, and she fought until her last breath. Unfortunately, until she passed away in 2003. So 47 years she was fighting to get justice for Emmett. And what we've been able to produce is something that she actually wanted to produce and to have done, so that the story of Emmett Till could continue on.
Yeah. And what has it meant to you to devote your life to the story?
Oh my, it's been quite overwhelming. Over half of my life has been dedicated to fighting for justice for Emmett and telling his story. And it's just very important because there's no other story that speaks more to this generation and time than the story of Emmett Lewis Till.
Chinonye, Danielle Deadweiler's performance as Mamie is absolutely unforgettable. Yep. Unfortunately, she can't be here, but she will be here at the world premiere tonight, as I mentioned. What was the process like in casting such an emotionally complex part, and what were some early conversations with Danielle like about the performance?
I mean, Danielle's performance in this film is a revelation. So months into the process of trying to find our Mamie, she sent in an audition tape. And that was, it was that simple. Yeah, She sent in an audition tape, and I was like, who is that? Like, what? It blew me away. And then I she was called back, and this she blew me away after only having the sides and not the whole script. Wow. And she embodied everything that I tend to cast for in actors, particularly in leads, is right here. Mm-hmm. Can you communicate a story with your eyes? Can you hold and command a screen without saying a word? What's your nonverbal expression like? And can you really bring out the emotional subtext? And she checked all those boxes. And I called her back. We had a director's session with using the scene where Mamie is looking at Emmett's body for the first time. And we talked through the emotional beats of that scene, and she just delivered beyond what I could even imagine. So then after she was cast, we spent a few months before production going through every single emotional beat and nuance of the script from beginning to end repeatedly. And she did her own deep, deep dive into the research. And by the time we got on set, she had such an inherent understanding of who Mamie was on an emotional and psychological level and the journey that she was going to go on throughout the film. And this is no hyperbole. Every take she gave was fantastic. I mean, yes. I mean, yeah. And that testimony scene, she got a standing ovation from the crew, and probably from some of y'all.
Yeah. I gave it to her.
Yeah.
I was That's a really good take.
Yeah. And it was so good. I was like, I guess we don't need to do anymore.
Right. Yeah. I was like, yo, go ahead. I was like, yeah,
we're good.
I didn't do that. I think you do like.
We're going home now, right?
And when the other actors who were supposed to have their own close-ups or whatnot say, "Now you're good."
Yeah, right.
That's right. Yeah.
I ain't going up against that. Trying to get my best reaction.
Yeah. That testimony scene we'll come back to in a moment. It is one of the most extraordinary things I've seen in decades. It's really phenomenal and so powerful, as is this entire cast around Danielle. Jalyn, your work as Emmett in the film is amazing.
Thank you.
You were 14 last year when you were cast in the film, the same age that Emmett was when he was murdered. Let's talk about how you play him with such joy, and in those scenes in Chicago with such a sense of hope and a sense of exuberance, and what were some keys to playing Emmett for you?
Yeah, just remembering that he was, a 14-year-old kid is probably the biggest thing, because in that time, speaking from experience, all you want to do is have fun and smile and, bring up the spirits of everyone around you while simultaneously being curious. And that hope and just pureness of heart was everything that he was and everything that I wanted to embody.
Yeah. There's a moment when Mamie says, as you're heading down to Mississippi, Emmett, try and make yourself small. Right. And the sense is that Emmett in some ways, walks into a room and he lights it up, right?
Right.
He makes it special. Yeah. And what was it like working with Danielle and kind of having that dynamic with her, that mother-son dynamic, and creating that performance?
Oh my God, Danielle is so amazing. In our audition together, it was awesome. Like, the chemistry was there. At that point, it didn't really feel like an audition, because sometimes when you go into it, like, it's an audition, but you're still being yourself. But with her, it was just like so naturally angelic, and like the vibe was just amazing. She was there firsthand, so yeah, we were laughing, and because my audition tape, we sung the song. But once we were going through it, she was just so motherly and so nurturing. Yeah. So yeah.
And I have to say, when Danielle and Jalyn first met, you remember when I played the opening song for the film, Sincerely, this boy, we're at a conference table in the studio, and he goes and asks to take Danielle's hand, turns her around and starts dancing.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is our Emmett.
That was a great moment.
Couldn't have been more perfect, exactly. Wow. Just a connection right there. Just a reminder to our collected virtual press, please submit questions using the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. If you have more than one question, as time allows, we'll definitely get to it. Sean, in the film, we see Gene Mobley have to work with Mamie and tactically step away so that as she's trying to say to the press what happened, as she tries to get the word out to the country and to the world, about her relationship with Gene, though, is complex and interesting in many ways. What was some of your research like into Gene and the love story that he and Mamie had?
Well, the bulk of the knowledge that I have about Gene, I got actually from
Mr. Keith Beauchamp. He and I talked on the phone for hours. And he knew both Gene and Mamie very well. We saw them together, over many years. And he gave me an excellent kind of intimate sense of how they were together, the type of love that they had, how much of a sense of service and devotion that he had for her, even before this tragedy happened. And so Keith really just gave me like a good source sense of how they were together. I also read Mamie's autobiography, discussions with Chinonye as well, and you just kind of put it all together as best you can in your head. And in terms of their relationship and him having to step back so that she could do what she had to do, Gene was kind of a surrogate father to Emmett, so he understood that it wasn't about him.
No.
It's about justice for his surrogate son. It was about doing what needed to be done so that the world would know. And I don't think, you see in the film, I don't know if he was necessarily on board with it initially, but I think that he had such a sense of service to Mamie that's the bottom line. And that's the end of it.
Yeah, yeah. John, your performance is also amazing. Moses Wright, Emmett's great uncle, was a sharecropper and a preacher when Emmett visited Moses and his family in Money, Mississippi in 1955. He is, in your performance, a complex and heartbreaking figure. What was the balancing act you kind of had to work into your performance to get across the dangerous and kind of moment-by-moment decisions that Moses had to make in the era at that moment?
I felt like with Mose, well, actually, the story itself is a story of innocence and the loss of innocence. And there was something really interesting with Moses' particular journey, because it all started off as an act of love, bringing family down to meet family, to learn more about family. And it turns into something so tragic, obviously. And with Mose, it happens kind of on his watch. So there's a great deal of responsibility that he bears, and the pressures of being that kind of man, black man in the South at that time, and what does one do to protect one's family, and when can that be done? And so it felt like with Mose, for me, there was this push and pull as to the right thing to do or the thing to save your family, and there's a certain amount of push and pull in that sense. And perhaps with Mose realizing maybe he did the wrong thing, but it's somewhat ambiguous because, well, what else could I have done? Had I have done the thing of taking my gun and defending everybody, perhaps everyone would have lost their lives. And then how do you explain that to another family member? And also, how does one seek redemption? And is there redemption for that sort of a situation? So I think he's incredibly complex, but he's also a man that's thrown into an incredibly complex situation, which makes it universal in a sense.
Yeah, very universal, very universal. And in fact, when Mose says to Mamie that he is going to testify at the court trial, and it explains to her that a black man in Mississippi testifying against two white men, that he will die, and the sense of that this is the only choice though for him to do, and she talks to him about that.
And this is the right thing to do, and I think that's his moment, perhaps, of redemption. Because, as he states, no black man has testified against a white man in court and lived to talk about it. But that's his courage, and that's what he's going to do, which is the right thing, obviously.
Yeah, absolutely. Tosin, Medgar Evers, such a vital part of the civil rights movement, reminds us by the appearance in the film that the issues in this film, racism, voter suppression, the corruption of the courts, the determination to speak the truth publicly, as Mamie did, are issues that are being grappled with and fought for today, just as much as they were in 1955, 67 years after Emmett was killed. Talk to us about how important Medgar Evers was to what became Mamie's moment and her journey then subsequent to that.
I mean, he says it himself, her showing the picture of Emmett inspired him, and he felt like a great sense of purpose to try and help her and achieve this, this goal of getting justice. And I mean, without that tragedy happening, would he have had the inspiration and the fire to do what he needed to do? And even though we didn't get the result or the end goal that they wanted, it still gave them the fire to keep on pushing and trying to trailblaze and just do right for the people. So I mean, it's definitely important. I mean, I didn't really know about Medgar Evers until the story, so I felt like in me getting this role and doing the research and finding out his journey and finding out what he's done for the people and for the service, and it's just kind of inspiring. So the fact that he's kind of, you know, pushing along and pushing the story along, it's just great. Yeah. So yeah.
In many ways, he's sort of a personification of the inspiration that Mamie instills in people and the fire that she starts, right?
For sure. Yeah. He's just carrying on the torch, you know, and that's what we all doing. Just like carrying on the torch and just keep it going and just trying to get the end goal, justice. Yeah.
Jayme, Myrlie Evers also went on to become an important figure in the civil rights movement after her husband Medgar was killed in 1963. Her perspective in the film is very important because there's a conversation that she has with Mamie where she's talking about registering people to vote and how important these issues are, and she's looking forward. And Mamie says, essentially, I did everything right, I did everything the safe way, and this still happened to me. Talk to us about Myrlie's journey and what that performance was like to kind of get in and what the keys were for her.
Chinonye and I talked about this. It also felt like a pivotal moment in Myrlie's life because they're doing all this work beforehand, right? What you would potentially say is more of the safe work, right? But the pressure is growing and the danger is growing, and to see a child murdered in the way that Emmett was, and Myrlie is now a new mother of a son, that's a different weight that she's now carrying. And we talked about it being a pivotal moment of decision that Mamie inspires in Myrlie. Am I going to keep going with Medgar on this journey because I can see it's lit a fire in him? Or am I going to pull away and fall back? And is that even an option? And Mamie presents a kind of strength and courage that Myrlie can now attach to and take with her. And it becomes a kind of passing down then amongst other women in the civil rights movement that I think for Myrlie starts with Mamie, you know? So, yeah.
No, that's exactly right. The questions, obviously, the Q&A function on your screen, at the bottom of the screen, is how to submit your questions. Let's go to some press questions right now. Laura Miller from Sheen Magazine asks of the actors, there were a lot of emotional themes that played out very well on screen. Can you all speak to how you were able to translate the fear, rage, sadness, and fervent need for justice in this film? I mean, I guess we could start with Sean, if you want to start.
Okay, how translate exactly?
Yeah, how the fear and rage and sadness and need for justice, how did you kind of able to translate that into a performance aspect in the film?
Well, I mean, just speaking for myself personally, it's still going on.
I'm about to say, yeah.
So that's not hard to do.
It's right on the surface.
I walk around with a sense of not so much fear, but rage about what's still going on. There's so much a lack of accountability when Black people are abused and killed. That's happening right now. That there's no issue channeling that when it comes to telling this story at all, at least for me.
John, let's go to you in terms of translating those aspects, the fear, rage, sadness, all of that, the need for justice into a performance. How are there elements of that that you're almost like a diamond, like you kind of turn it and there's facets to it at different moments, different scenes?
Yeah, I would say the same thing as Sean, that we already walk around with some of those feelings. The fact that we get the opportunity to be in such an amazing film that has such historical legacy. Allows us to bring that to the fore. And I'll credit Chinonye because I just felt that she was after that too, and she was very specific and created an atmosphere in which the actors could do that work that was on the surface and bring it even deeper. And for me and Mose, as I said earlier, it's incredibly complicated. And so I wanted to live in that place of ambiguity as to what to do and what not to do and when to do. But at the end of the day, it's a family and there's lots of love that's involved. And you're also looking at a situation that if you don't do something about this one, it's going to continue to happen again. Because if Mamie decided to let this go, it would have just been another black boy that died in the South. That would have been a footnote, and if that, in some newspaper. But the fact that she stood up with courage. So I think for me, just knowing the story or aspects of the story and working on the film, which then filled in my true understanding of the story, made bringing out the emotional aspects for my character in the scenes that I had to work in, not easy, but definitely attainable.
Yeah, yeah. And Tosin and Jayme, and in terms of the Medgar Evers and Myrlie Evers, that it kind of almost becomes a sense of a life's mission in some ways, doesn't it?
It's a duty, because he served in the army. He has a sense of purpose. He knows like this is a mission that we've got to complete. So for me, it was like you can draw on these inspirations of emotions of black racism and stuff like that. But at the same time, it's like being a man with so much integrity and purpose. It's like, how do you eat that? Do you know what I mean? It's like, like if he feels this and he's doing this, like, how can you just stand there and just like watch it happen? It was like wanting to do something, but yet at the same time being powerless. But at the same time, you're playing the game to fight a bigger cause at the same time. Do you know what I mean? So for me, it was just like, it was easy to draw on these emotions, but at the same time, it's the unity that they had. They was all sticking together, prepared to help each other, and most importantly, prepared to die for it. They was prepared to go the lengths to achieve and to make sure things do change and to make sure things do happen. So to have that kind of sense of fearlessness at the same time, do you know what I mean? It's what drives and it's what kind of motivates, and yeah.
Jayme?
I would say it was such a gift that Chinonye provided, I think, for Danielle and I, because it's rare that we get to get that intimate in a conversation between two black women. Okay? That don't happen much in life, let alone on the screen. And Danielle and I talked a lot about what's being said and what's being spoken. And that kind of, they're surrounded by men, and they're surrounded by guns, and they're surrounded, right? And here is a very intimate, insular moment between the two of them that something is being transferred, right? That I took as a gift, because I'm like, I don't know when I'm gonna get that again with an actress as generous as Danielle and so gifted as she is. I was like, nah, I gotta soak this up. Because again, it allowed, like he said, it allowed us to channel and process some of our own emotions, right, that are right at the surface in today, in the present, yeah.
And Jalyn, at 15, let's talk about that aspect of it for you, and whether it's the fear or the awareness or any of these aspects that the question relates to. How did you kind of work it into your performance or kind of view it?
Yeah, so most of his emotional roller coaster was just him being curious and happy and wanting to have fun. But the part of the story that comes with the fear is, a base of it is just confusion, because he's always lived in his kind of own world and only known sunshine and everyone, being together, that unity. But when he goes into this new place, he's sort of confused on, the new aspects, which he is told by his mother, but not in its entirety, And the fear that comes was just, it was easy. Like they said, it's stuff that you can go through. My mom does a great job in making sure that I'm okay and I'm protected and that I know and I'm aware. But the fear is always something that will still be there. Fear of the unknown, fear of, falling into the wrong place, and the fear that he exerted, which came so fast and so hard.
Yeah. Koku from blackfilm.com asks if Chinonye, how did you help the cast mentally prepare and care for themselves in these roles? It's a good question, particularly with Danielle's portrayal of Mamie. From reading the script to channeling her strength and pain during filming, how did you help them prepare and care for themselves?
So a couple things. We had an on-set therapist every day, and she was great and available to cast and crew. And that was really important to the producers and myself. And I tend to be a bit protective of the cast that I work with and the crew. And so I tried to be incredibly mindful of what they need. And so, for instance, with with Danielle, when we were shooting the scene when she is looking at Emmett's body, I told the crew, listen, we got 2 takes.
Right, right.
That's it.
Right.
Yeah.
Try to get as perfect as you can, but whatever we get is what we got.
Yep.
And, because I'm not putting Danielle through that more than twice. That was the same when we shot the scene in the church, and Keisha, I think we did two takes, 1 or 2 takes, and she could not do any. And I mean, you watch the film, it's like, you can't, like, I didn't even want to watch more than 2 takes. And so having those very strict limits was really important. Also just stopping everything we're doing if we need to. I'm gonna share a little story, Jalyn. When we were shooting the scene where Emmett is abducted, there was a moment, I don't know if you remember this, where you asked for a hug from your mom. And we had to, and so we stopped everything we're doing after, I don't know what take it was, some take, and he just needed that, he just needed a hug from his mom. And we just stopped everything. And then we only resumed when he was ready. And, and so my approach was, we're all human beings, first and foremost, and everyone's well-being is the priority. And, the film's important and everything, and we're gonna make the film, but we have to come out of this as whole as possible, And so Danielle and I have had a lot of conversations before, during, and after the making of this film about what we need mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and what we need after this journey. How do we recalibrate and get ourselves back? And so, we still are having those conversations, and checking in with each other. And so those are all of the things. And I mean, our producer Barbara is, very motherly, and she has a bag that's like full of like anything you need, from like Excedrin to a granola bar. She just shows up with the bag and just lets us know if you need anything.
Always important to have one of the
literally anything you need is in this bag. And so she was there on set almost every single day, and she was also very protective of everyone and making sure that we get what we need, and also for the crew as well. And there are times when, Bobby, a cinematographer, had to take a break, to take a pause, and we just stopped, because it gets hard. So those are all the things we did.
Yeah, that's Bobby Bukowski, your amazing director of photography. We'll talk about that in a moment too. I'm going to get to the questions again in a second, but since you just brought it up, I want to follow a line a little bit, because obviously the pictures of Emmett are seared in all of our minds, but the film is very subtle in showing it, and it was important to you to not contribute to the exploitation of violence on Black bodies by I guess maybe showing what people would expect you to see in the film. It's very subtle, and it is very graceful in the way you present it. Talk to us about how those decisions were made.
Well, before I even signed on to the project, I knew that I was not interested in showing physical violence inflicted on Black bodies. For a couple reasons. One, it was not important to the narrative that I wanted to tell. And because this is Mamie's story, this is her journey. 2, as a Black person, I didn't want to shoot it, and I didn't want to watch it, and I didn't want to put the audiences through that as well, and traumatize or re-traumatize or whatnot myself. And we just don't need it, And so, so that was an easy decision and non-negotiable for me, creatively and narratively. But what was important for me to show, but be very intentional about, was Emmett's body. And that my decision to do that was an extension of Mamie's decision in 1955. And so it was critical, but I knew that I wanted to do it sparingly, yet effectively. And so when we really do see Emmett's face and full body is with the people in the church who are viewing it. And so I wanted to almost recreate that experience of the world seeing what happened to her son collectively. Yeah, and so powerful it is, and that within that, all of those contexts. Ed Douglas asks of Keith, Keith, I was curious about the scene where Mamie meets with Medgar Evers' wife, and whether that was based on some known meeting between the 2 women.
Well, I, of course, know the late, I didn't know the late, Medgar Evers. Myrlie, Mother Myrlie, I do know, and I know the family extremely well, and we wanted to pay homage to Medgar and Myrlie with those particular scenes. And so I know they crossed paths, but we know that they did not have that exact conversation. But we wanted to, pay homage to them because they're unsung heroes. And, people have been longing for a Medgar and Myrlie story for a long period of time. And it just fell in place for this film to have them aboard.
Yeah. The next question is from Andrew Marcel, and he also asks of Keith that the Emmett Till Anti-Lynching Act was finally enacted earlier this year.
Yes.
Unbelievable. But
yes.
Exactly.
Yes.
How did you all respond to the news? And we can start with Keith and move on. How did you respond to the news when it was passed, having become so deeply involved with the story?
Well, I attended the signing of the law. It's, of course, bittersweet in many ways. Bittersweet because it has taken close to over 100 years for it to get passed and 200 attempts to finally get a hate crime law, federal hate crime law to lynching in America, something that we know all of us know it's wrong. And so, again, it was bittersweet on one hand, and it was a victory on the other, bittersweet as well because we're still fighting for justice for Emmett Till.
Yes, yes. Chinonye, I'm going to also ask you about working with, and the rest of the cast as well, but in working with Whoopi Goldberg and what that was like,
Yes.
and how important she was to the project as a co-star and as a producer, and what she meant to the project.
Well, as a producer, I remember first meeting with her and the other producers and meeting Whoopi specifically. She was so humble, and rarely have I felt that seen by someone else in this industry as an artist, as a Black woman, as a person. And she was just so respectful and loving towards my artistic vision for this film and my narrative point of view. And she welcomed me with open arms and was so supportive. And she was just incredible in that way as a producer. And I mean, as an actor, she was once again also really humble and just really receptive to direction and hungry for it too. And just so easy to work with. And watching her and Danielle was just incredible because I felt like in some ways Whoopi was passing the baton to Danielle. It was just so beautiful. And in between takes, she was hilarious. She is improv queen.
Yes.
Right?
That's right.
It was so funny. Oh my goodness.
And Alma, she plays Mamie's mother. It's a complex performance as well because there is sort of a sense of she's from Mississippi. There's a complex sort of relationship between she and Mamie because when Mamie says to her that she left Mississippi, but Alma, there's almost a sense of defensiveness, but also a sense of understanding what's going on, but being in some ways a mother in a lot of ways. What was that like in terms of the character, kind of fine-tuning Alma as a character?
Yeah, I mean, I really enjoyed writing her complexity and the kind of subtextual and not so subtextual tension between her and Mamie that is partially generational.
Sorry.
You all right?
Yep.
And that was partially generational, but it also, there was a kind of a shift in their relationship where Alma was the matriarchal one, and Mamie in some ways was I mean, she's her child, but there was a shift in the dynamic where that was a critical turning point for them, where Mamie then had to go ahead and step into the more kind of patriarchal role and really actively suppress some of the complexities of emotions that are bubbling up inside of her just so she can go ahead and get this job done and be now the caretaker in some ways of Alma. And so there was an interesting reversal. And so I really enjoyed exploring that reversal and finding that balance. And I mean, I have to say the scene where, Alma breaks down in Mamie's arms, I mean, it's such a critical turning point in their relationship. And, when we shot that in a lot of different ways. And we finally found the beats that we felt we really worked and was authentic to where we were at in the film. And And so, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And also a shout out to Frankie Faison, who's fantastic.
Yes.
So fantastic. It's incredible. Sean and Jalyn, let's talk about working with Whoopi and what that was like. Beyond the cracking you guys up between takes, what was it like having that dynamic with her and working with her in those scenes?
Oh my God, it was an honor for me. You know, me and my mom, we were like just so excited to even be in the same, room as her. But as far as the great actor she was so insightful and just like she said, so humble. And in each of the scenes, like, it was just me feeling warmth from him, her, like just everybody. It was so natural, and you can really feel the humanity from everybody.
Yeah. Sean, how about you working with?
Well, we're all actors and we all, do the job, whatever. But there's certain people where you're like, this is more than just a job. This is Whoopi Goldberg.
Yeah.
And so you get on set and you try and be focused on your job and what you do. But when you're confronted with Whoopi Goldberg, it's hard to like do that. And so, but what's great about her is that she immediately cut right through that and tossed it out the window.
Yes.
She was just like, I'm not, Color Purple Oscar winner Whoopi Goldberg. I'm just Whoopi, and let's do the work and let's have fun.
Yeah.
And so she gave me the gift of kind of like letting go my, fanboy stuff and doing the work.
Yeah.
And not a lot of actors are able to do that. But she gave us that gift.
Yeah.
And so we were able to, like, within 30 seconds, start cracking jokes and improvising. Like, and we were off and running.
A quick question for you, Chinonye, about working with Bobby Bukowski, your director of photography, and the look of the film, which is so rich and honeyed in a lot of ways and really evocative, and yet it also has nuances to it as well. What was it like creating the look of the film?
So I knew that I wanted a vibrant color palette, I wanted the color palette to reflect the vibrancy, the brightness, the life of Black people in Black spaces. And so, I knew the melanin needed to be rich and delicious. And so that was a starting point in my conversations with Bobby and figuring out lighting options that would really illuminate Blackness and Black people and make all the Black people just look so rich and incredible and make the world, the spaces that they're in, really pop and have a vibrancy to it. And so those are and so that was our starting point. And I was very, I knew what I wanted. And, so it was just a matter of just letting Bobby know. So he could catch on. And I mean, I knew that I really wanted to be intentional about framing and composition choices. Who and what is in the frame versus who and what is not.
Right.
How do we suggest a world beyond the frame so we can go ahead and center particular people within this frame and prioritize a Black lens or Black gaze in the frame. I was really intentional about low camera angles to visually emphasize power and empowerment, particularly when we have the scene where Moses testifies. That was something that we found on the day. I'm a meticulous planner with my cinematography, so we can get on set and throw everything away if we need to. Yeah. And so the testimony scene, Bobby and I had 8 or 9 shots planned. And then we shot that first, what's in the film, and we look at each other, and we're like, oh, I don't think we need to do anything else. I talk a lot with Bobby about what is going on emotionally, right? Because the visual language has to be in concert with what is going on emotionally, subtextually. And so we knew that even though we're completely changing our plans, that long take is still accomplishing what we want to accomplish on an emotional, subtextual level. It's just doing it in a different way visually. So after the second take, when I was already plotting, okay, we need to do, this is gonna be the only shot for the scene, it was a matter of adjusting the framing and composition. So making sure that the lawyer's hands or the rings or the photos or rack focus from the jury, so we can be clear about space and suggesting the world within the frame as we get sucked in more and more in Mamie's emotional moment.
Right.
So those are some of the conversations we had, especially about camera movement and how we want to move through spaces. And one of the biggest things is I'm so in love with the language of cinema and all of the tools you can use to communicate a story and people's humanity. And so it was really important to Bobby and I to make this as artful and cinematic as possible, but let the artistry be rooted in story and character.
Yeah, it absolutely is. To round up the wrap-up question, Janet Walker asks of the cast, can each of you describe your most memorable moment from the entire process of making the film? Jayme, we can start with you and then we'll work our way over.
Oh, Jesus. My most memorable moment. Well, I was only on set for like 2 days, and I felt like I was just like kind of coming into something that was already established. But I gotta say, in filming this scene with Danielle and I, just the connection that was established between Danielle, myself, and Chinonye, it was like, it didn't matter who else was in the room or on that set. I'm not exaggerating when I tell you how much of a gift it is to have somebody that generous. It's just not, it's not common necessarily. And so I always cherish that. And applaud and admire somebody that can be that, especially with all that Danielle had going on. You know what I mean? She didn't have to be that available on and off screen, you know, with everything on her plate. And so that I left away with that. Yeah.
Tosin?
I mean, the courtroom scene when she takes the stand. I mean, that was like, she's gonna do it. The stand, 2 scenes back to back. I was thinking, well, that's a lot of pages, you know? I was like, all right, cool. That's a lot of pages. I was like, all right, cool, you know what? I'm here, like, let me give her my attention. So normally, like, sometimes when you, like, because I just came off doing a courtroom scene, so sometimes when you're doing a courtroom, you might just drift out for a bit. And I was thinking, because that's what I was thinking about. I was thinking, oh, I might drift out for a bit. I was like, I can't afford it. But, like, when she was into it, I was like, yo, like, I'm just looking at her like, yo.
Yeah.
Then the second one happens, I'm like, yo, I'm locked in. And I was like, cut. And I was like, yo, that was a really good take, you know? I was like,
That was when Bobby and I decided.
yeah, then Chin was like, yeah, so he was thinking, that's it. And I was like, yeah. I know I have no rap, but I think that's it. That was a great, and it's like one of the greatest things I've ever experienced on set. I don't think like you can ever replicate that, do you know what I mean? I think like some moments are just special, and for me it's like, you know, everyone has a scene or film where things just happen and it's special. I feel like that was a real special moment, and for me, I don't think, I mean, it's just aspiring. Hopefully, you know, I can do something like that one day, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, it was just really good to see and be a part of and witness. So yeah, that was...
something you carry with you.
Yeah, you know what I mean? One take, that's a real one-take wonder right there, man. So yeah, it was special.
John, how about you in terms of the most memorable part of the process?
Oh, that big scene I had with Whoopi. No, I didn't.
Can we cut
No, I would say the scene that I have with Mamie, with Danielle, which is by the Riverside.
Riverside, yeah, that one was really good.
Because I was terrified. Because Danielle was so good and so Mamie in all of her intentions and focus that I felt I needed to at least be there with her. And as everyone has said, she's an incredibly generous actress. But what I got from watching her when we were either in the scene or out of the scene was she's channeling Mamie.
Right.
She really is.
She was locked in.
And so it was just a gift to work with someone that in the zone for something that is that important as a film, right? To really elevate this character for the courage and what she did. I mean, she started the civil rights movement for some, right?
Yeah.
So that was probably my most memorable, working with her in that scene.
Yeah. Sean, how about you?
For me, it would have to be that scene where Emmett comes home in that box. From Mississippi on the train. That day was, God, hold on. That day was incredible because I feel like Chinonye set things up where it was very solemn and it was very spiritual. And I literally felt like I was in a time machine. And we were there on that train platform shooting that scene. The power of whatever it is that Danielle was going through and what she put herself through, it just grounded this massive train platform. And we were all just right there in this moment in time. And it was just so moving because you could hear a pin drop on this massive train platform with like probably 100 people. And you could hear a pin drop. And it was just a real moment that you can't, like you were saying about the courtroom, like you can't replicate that. It just was what it was.
And I gotta say, Sean, you really cared for Danielle in that, and when we were shooting those scenes, because Danielle gives her whole mind, body, and spirit, and in between takes of that, she physically could not walk.
She couldn't walk.
And so Sean, like, physically held her up and like really took care of her. So.
Wow. Jalyn, to wrap up, how about you? The most memorable moment?
Yeah. No. I was gonna say the same thing. No, because I was in my trailer when that happened, and I heard a lot of what was going on, and then I was like, oh man, because I didn't want to go on set. I had, you know, it's just stuff. But I watched it with my peers, and we all shed tears. Like we all cried, and the amount of emotion that she dug into, it will really like latch on your heart. And it did to me, and of course my friend who's next to me is like, man, I don't cry, you know what I'm saying? I don't cry. But I was literally seeing the waterworks, and it's great when you can, dig into people's hearts and really bring that out of them. So I would say the same thing.
Yeah, definitely do. Well, the film is extraordinary and phenomenal in so many ways. It premieres tonight. It's world premiere at the 60th New York Film Festival. And then it opens up throughout October. It starts limited.
October 14th?
October 14th, October 20th, and then it opens wide. It is such an important film to see with the community. It is only available in theaters. It's so important to see with a community and with people around you, because it's the kind of movie that engenders just so many more emotions that we are all needing to feel. Thank you all so much. Congratulations on the film. Ladies and gentlemen, Chinonye Chukwu, Jalyn Hall, Sean Patrick Thomas, John Douglas Thompson, Tosin Cole, Jayme Lawson, and Keith Beauchamp. The film is Till. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
If you want to see more content like this on blackfilm.com, make sure you like, subscribe, and ring that bell.